The assignments, discussions, and learning logs, you're going to show several of the course objectives. A big one that you're going to use a lot throughout the 4 modules is using the standards, or identifying the national, state, and local standards that deal with integrating technology. You also want to make sure you connect it to what you're currently teaching, those standards that you are addressing for your students. Another big one, especially for Module 1, is here we're developing how we're going to identify and share these technology applications in teaching. And the big part is that you need to be reflective in how you're going to use this and how it will impact your students' learning. By the end of this course, you will have developed a technology integration plan. That's our end goal. And we used backwards design to develop this course. So each module and assignments help you get to that end point. So for assignment 1, it's all about the learner. What are the learner's needs, learning styles, interests, and how are you going to address them through your teaching methods? And then in this course, you're going to learn about the research and the resources that will help your learners achieve those standards we talked about before, or master those standards. So I just want to summarize some things that you should have learned so far. Everyone should have completed the voice thread activity where you got to develop a definition of technology. And many of you have learned that there's this little t technology and a big T. The big T is anything human-made or altered to solve a problem or meet a need. Doesn't have to be a digital device. Some favorite ones is like an ice cream cone. That's technology. That's not a natural resource. It's composed of natural resources, but they were manipulated to create the ice cream cone. Another one that we're going to focus on a lot in this course for technology purposes is to help make that equitable access for all learners. And that's things like a ramp, so someone in a wheelchair can get into a school. Glasses, so everyone can see clearly, so that they can learn the material, learn what they need to learn. They have access to read. I could have added some braille here. That little t is what people tend to focus on, and that was that 24 hours in a digital world. But you got to see exactly how often you do use technology. And I found this cool graphic here by statistica.com. And it has lots of resources that you can also pull into your classroom. But here's a good one that's pretty relevant. It's called Always On, and how much media people use, the average person uses in a day. Through the discussion board, I see that people are learning the difference between technology education and educational technology. Technology education would be considered maybe that CTE course in middle and high school, but we're now pushing down into elementary and even preschool in some cases, where you're learning and students are learning about technology, the T in STEM. And that's where we're talking about innovation and how we change something to help us solve a problem. We also see it's how it is used, or it's interrelated or integrated into math, science, and it's the end result of engineering, creating technology. And we can see its integration into other subjects as well. And technological literacy is something that all students need to develop, because everything around us as we're learning, most things are technology. Then educational technology is what people tend to think about, and that's the devices that we're using to help communicate and share ideas. And we're learning how, and through this course, we're also going to learn how to use those more effectively to meet the needs of students. And there was a great discussion about differentiation and how that educational technology can make learning more accessible to more students. So this course is all about the impact on learning that technology has. And one is the role of the teacher. That's kind of evolving as we have more innovations in technology that we bring into the classroom. Chapter 8 in the book, I always made this a required reading, but I didn't because we're not going to use the whole book, but it's From Smartphones to Social Media, How Technology Affects Our Brains and Behavior. And this is by Mark Carrier. And in Chapter 8, it focuses on school learning. And so it goes back in history to since over 50 years ago, educators worried about television. And here I have a picture of a television from the 60s. They were worried about how it would affect students' learning. Would they be able to pay attention? Would it be too distracting for them? Then we move up to the 1979, early 80s. Students who were born after this time went to school that had internet-based technologies. So they now had access to the internet in like searching. This is way before, a couple of years before Google. But how they got information and shared information. I remember back in that day, in the late 90s, my kids had a pen pal in Africa, and we did it through email. And that was interesting to them. We didn't have the visuals like we had now. We couldn't do the face to the face chatting where we could see each other, but they did learn a lot through their pen pal and using the internet and how to write emails. Then the information and communication technologies, what we're going to call ICT, also changed how information was delivered. And that included how students were learning. So not all the information came through the teacher. So now it comes from other sources that are digital. So it could be ebooks, or it could be a website. Videos is one that was like Brain Pop was popular. It may still be popular in a lot of schools, but there are more choices now getting videos to students to share information. Khan Academy is a big one they focused on in this book. And if you read the story about how it got started, Khan just wanted to create a way to help his family members how to tutor them. There were so many that he couldn't keep up with them, so he started making these short little videos through YouTube, and then Khan Academy grew out of that. Also, it is how students do their homework. So now instead of having to worry about having this piece of paper to hand in, they now can email it or upload it to the teacher through one of the platforms. So there are some key points, or affordances from ICT, the information and communication technologies, that made a big difference in learning and made it more accessible. I'm going to use that word a lot, how we make learning more accessible to students. It's portable and it's small enough so that it can be used by many students in many different locations. It even talks in the book about how students can use it laying down or sitting up so they can get comfortable and really use it, especially e-readers. It also helps with students learn how to socialize and interact with each other. And, there's some drawbacks with that. We talk about bullying, but there are a lot of benefits to it as well. It's also more efficient. We can get information to the learners faster and get it to everyone that has access to a computer. Um, Information can be updated. So remember back in the day, we would have these textbooks and they would be outdated when we got them, especially if they were based on certain events that were coming up. By the time we got the book, the event could have happened. You talk about rocket launches that NASA does. So because everything is updated and can be updated in real time, we're getting information to learners faster and more efficient way. What I love about the e-readers or the e-books is the integrated dictionary and other reference materials. So as I'm reading, I love to read, and I come across a word or they name a brand of, I don't know, shoe or clothing I don't recognize. I could look it up instantly and understand what the author is talking about or the message he or she is trying to convey. It's good for flipped classrooms or blended learning. So students can have their lecture before they get to class. And then when they're in class, they can spend more time on hands-on activity. And another one of my favorites is this massive open online courses, MOOCs. And I've taken free courses through Coursera. There are other versions as well, other groups or companies. But I've done topography, which I wouldn't have wanted to pay for because I really didn't understand what it was till I got into it, and I loved it. And if you want a certificate, it's just a minimal fee that you can pay. But those are some of the positive impacts that technology has had on learning, and how it also is starting to transform or change the role of the teacher. And so we're going to keep on this week discussing that, the role of the teacher,
technology integration
and how
matrix
technology has
was developed
impacted
by Florida Center
what educators do
for
and how they
instructional
deliver
technology,
information to
and
their
this was
students.
done in the early 2005. But it's a great resource and tool that you should use and will use during this course to help you learn how to describe what's going on in a learning environment and how students are going to be actively engaged. So I'm going to cover the 5 levels of technology integration, and entry is the first level, and this is pretty much teacher directed. So the teacher is given direct instruction to the student and given like small tasks at a time. Then adoption level, the students are learning to be more comfortable with the material and able to do a little bit more. Adaptation, students are really familiar with the tool and have a greater understanding and are able to work without step-by-step instructions from the teacher. Infusion is where the kids kind of really take off. You can see who really has it. Teachers do take step back and guides more of the students to making decisions about how and when to use this tool. And then transformation is where students get more creative. Those are the ones that said, hey, did you know I could do this with this tool? Or they come up with new ideas, and the teacher is more of a mentor and asks more questions about what the students are doing with this technology. And you can see more where the students are now able to use higher level thinking skills, and using this technology allows them to do something they couldn't do without it. So for example, if they're making a layered map, using one of the map tools we're going to use later on, the student couldn't do it with just a regular paper pencil map. So if they're creating layers, maybe Google Earth is another good tool they could use. This is what we're talking about as far as transformation. So as learners move from entry level through the 5 stages to transformational, the ownership of learning is shifting. It's going from being teacher has ownership of learning, where students are given step-by-step instruction on how to use technology, to students or the learners have the ownership of learning, where they're being innovative and creative with how they're using the technology. So we're going from procedural understanding to conceptual understanding.